Now, I do want to talk a little bit more here about the Epstein files in general. So let's bring in Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican representing Tennessee. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and discuss all of this.
Thank y'all for having me.
All right. So first off, the big question I do have to ask you, what are your overall thoughts here as we look at the possibility of these files being released? Where do you stand overall?
Well, of course, I'd like to see anything that's pertinent to this situation released. But I think I'd warn people that, I see some of my Democrat colleagues are pushing for things like flight logs and things. And flight logs don't say anything other than somebody that was on his plane. And I know a lot of wealthy people, and they're flying up to New York, maybe from Florida or something. And, and dadgum, their plane, they can't get a plane, or their plane's is inoperable at the time. So they'll hitch a ride with somebody else, or they'll have a friend who's hitching a ride with them. Hey, we got extra seat. You want to fly with us? And they say, well, sure. And so they just all hop on it, and they're on the flight log. That doesn't mean they're a pedophile. And I would caution people to do that. And what I'm also afraid is, in this rush to do this, we might disclose a child's name or something like that. And that is nothing that needs to happen. But I should disclose to you that I've attempted to and passed some of the toughest laws in the country on going after child molesters and child porn and things like that. And I've held the hand of people that have been abused, and they carry a life sentence. This is nothing that, they can go through counseling and get over. They carry guilt. They destroy their lives. They have horrible situations in their lives because of this. And it is a life sentence. And I think that one thing we're doing when we're going after these files, we're sending a message to these dirtbags that do molest children that we're going to come after you. And two, at those people that are in the shadows, that we do believe what they say. And that's another thing. That's another problem you have with this, is a lot of people just don't believe it. And it could have been my uncle that did that, or my minister, or my priest, or what have you. And then we find out years later that was the case.
What do you make of President Trump's comments overall? He's had a lot to say about the Epstein files, especially over the last week or so here following that memo that was released. What do you make of his overall comments about the situation?
Yeah, I just don't know about his strategy. He always wins, though. I've been in those conversations with him, and I remembered, let's see, today is Friday, Thursday, Wednesday night, I guess it was. We were sitting there trying to figure out the crypto bill, and it was a huge bill. Senator Bill Hagerty out of Tennessee, he was my friend who was working on his side, and I was in this room with several other members who had our doubts about it. And President Trump came on the phone and answered the questions and fixed it. And he has an incredible gift at that. And you should never count him out. And honestly, I don't know what his strategy is in all this. But he's always come out right on everything. But do I think President Trump's in the files? I do not. In any kind. It's documented that he knew the guy, but he also banned him from Mar-a-Lago because he thought he was a dirtbag, and that was years ago. And then, and I don't think he's in the files because good and well that President Biden's Justice Department would have leaked that the first day. So there's no question there. And I think President Trump's concerns, as are mine, is that we don't need to let out kids or innocent people's names that would be prosecuted or persecuted by the public. And I think that's why we probably need to get some sort of special prosecutor. And if that's the case, and I'm not sure if that's the legal term or not. I'm not an attorney. I passed a lot of laws, but I'm not an attorney.
Talking overall, as we look into this and kind of going back a little bit from my first question, what information, as you look at this, because you've talked about the fact that you don't want some of the victims' names to get out, things of that nature, what information do you think would be pertinent to the people who are out there in the public?
I think that we know who the perpetrators were. We know some of the clients that obviously went on. this Gazelle, I don't know how to say her name, Miss Maxwell. She's obviously in prison for something, and I've actually written a letter to Chairman Comer about getting her subpoenaing her before our committee and getting her in there. But of course, now that I'm not an attorney. Now I've come to find out she's appealing where she's her charges, and and that of course she can't come in during the appeal process because it might affect her case. So, I just like to get to the bottom of it. But here's the problem with Washington D.C. And my biggest fear in all of this is that the Biden administration, someone in there has tampered with this evidence, has tampered with this stuff. And people say there's a list. I've known a lot of criminals. Heck, I've served in elected office with several of them. And the one thing they don't do is keep a list of their criminal activity. So this guy apparently operated at a pretty high level. There's computer files, there's tapes and things allegedly. I think that needs to be exposed. Again, how do you do that without exposing the children? And obviously, if they're raping some kid, and I want to correct people, they're not having sex with children. They're raping children. That's what they're doing. You don't have sex with a child. You rape a child. And that's what they did. And, ultimately, little brother, I tell you, it's not real popular for me to say this, but I am a Christian, and I'm not a very good one. I'm on the forgiving end of the spectrum. But ultimately, I'm going to answer to my maker one day. And Jesus talked about how you treat the least amongst us, and brother, that's all I got to hang my hat on. If I get to heaven and I stand before my Maker, and He asks me, "How did you treat the least amongst you?" I hope I can say with a clear conscience, "I did everything I could, Lord."
When it comes to the Epstein files, is there any kind of message that you want to get across to folks that are also Republicans or maybe Democrats on the other side of the aisle overall about all of this? Because again, the back and forth has continued for days. It's likely to continue. So what message do you want to get across?
I think we need to try to remove the politics out of it. It's become a partisan issue now. And what the heck did the Democrats do for 4 years when they had it? Now it's apparently a big issue. And the reality is, I've done a little research, and I could only find 2 different times where it was brought up during the campaign, and it was when questions were asked of him. He didn't bring it up. So I would just hope that we could get the politics out of it and let the legal system work. But Washington, D.C. is crooked as a dog's leg. Just look at the Kennedy assassination over 60 years ago. Dadgummit, we don't know what happened there. And we'll never know. And that's the problem with this. I do not think we will ever know exactly what went down on this thing.
All right. Congressman Tim Burchett, thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us. Anything else you want to add about this here before I let you go?
No, I just trust but verify. And look after your kids. Dadgum, I got a little girl, and I worry about her every second of every day. And I ask God to protect her and my wife when I'm not there. And I hope everybody else keeps an eye on their kids.
All right. Congressman, thank you again for being here. We always appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.